Hello, everybody. How you doing? And welcome to day 3 of our DER seminar, or shall I say summit. I've been corrected a couple times. It is not a conference, it is a summit. Thank you, Joven Fernandez. We are talking about leveling the playing field, leading with a DEI-focused lens in a global and diverse society. My name is Dr. John Gray, and I'm faculty in Stockton's doctorate program in organizational leadership. And we hope that you have enjoyed the previous 2 nights, and tonight will be no different. We have a special treat as the night's presenter is now a close to be finished graduate doctoral candidate. She should be defending in the fall, and you are in for a treat because her passion and her knowledge will ring through. So I'm pleased to have Joven Fernandez come because she's going to introduce Stephanie Wright and tell you a little bit about her as we prepare for the 3rd night of our DEI Summit. So thank you so much for tuning in and logging on and connecting with us. And remember, come for the information, but also engage with us. So we'll be looking for your questions and your comments, and we will be answering those as they come in. So Joven, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gray. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to those who are joining us again. As Dr. Gray mentioned, this is night 3, and tonight we will be focusing on equity, but of course, DEIB is woven into all of these conversations. So we're just excited to keep the conversation going, but also to take a deeper dive each night with each specific area. So I too share Dr. Gray's excitement for having a current lead student in the program, because while it's always great to bring in fresh keynotes who are in the field, practitioners, sharing their knowledge and wisdom with us. It's also always exciting to re-engage with alumni, but also for those of you who are here and interested in the LEAD program, you get to see firsthand who is in the program, what great things they're doing. So you're in for a real treat being able to engage with future Dr. Wright this evening. So that's how I'm going to keep referring to you, because we're going to speak this into existence. So super excited for you. But on that note, I'm going to read off your bio and share some of the amazing things that you are doing. So future Dr. Stephanie Wright is a native of Bridgeton, New Jersey, and a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Her commitment to service, leadership, and excellence has groomed her to be an innovator in the areas of fraternity and sorority affairs and student development. Wright is committed to the overall betterment of fraternal and sorority life, with a particular interest in advocacy for culturally based fraternal organizations, CBFOs. Her work aims to address systematic issues within institutional policies, address organizational misconduct, restore community standards, and set student organizations on a path to success. Stephanie is a dynamic speaker, that she definitely is, and presenter, addressing topics of student leadership, service, and hazing at various colleges and universities. With an extensive repertoire of knowledge, Stephanie can be found presenting and facilitating conversations at several conferences with both students and professionals to challenge their ideologies in student affairs. Stephanie founded the Greek Cultural Leadership Conference, CGLC, a Northeast-based conference for CBFOs in 2013. Stephanie wanted to create a developmental space where CBFOs felt as though they belonged and could engage in dialogue specific to their organizations. She founded SMW Services, LLC in 2017 to provide consultation and developmental programming to organizations and institutions. Stephanie is a 2003 graduate of Ramapo College of New Jersey with a Bachelor's of Arts in Communications, Public Relations, and matriculated on to complete a Master's of Arts in Administration and Supervision from Montclair State University in 2007, and a Master's of Arts in Journalism and Communication, Public Relations from Kent State University in 2014. She is currently pursuing her doctorate in organizational leadership from Stockton University. And I'm just going to ask Stephanie, before we dive into your session, if you could just share a little bit with us so far. You're a doctoral student in the LEAD program. What is your dissertation? How's that process going for you? And why the LEAD program at Stockton?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been engaging in leadership conversations and things of that nature for as long as I can remember. And when I decided to pursue another degree, I said leadership is my jam, right? So I want to focus on that. And Stockton was one of the few places that had organizational leadership. And reading through the material on the website, I said, yeah, this is the place that I need to be, right? I went to an open house and I was able to talk, to some of the folks that were interested. I talked to some faculty members, I think the founder of the program at the time. And I knew that this would be a program that was going to stretch me as an individual and as a leader. And I couldn't think of a better place to be. When I came for orientation, I met Dr. Gray actually. And he said, wait a minute, you have the ability to go to school where you work and get it for free, but you're here. And I was like, yeah, I'm investing in myself, right? So when we talk about leadership, it's that lifelong commitment to consistently growing and adding things to your toolbox. So that's why I chose the program. And then, it showed to be the best choice for me because I was definitely challenged and stretched, and it has made me a better individual and a better leader, which allows me to grow the work that I've done. So you talked about CGLC and, it's not public yet. I guess it's kind of public here, but we're working on CGLC South, right? So that's coming. So we're expanding. And I think a lot of that is to the program and the work that I've done with the faculty here. My dissertation, as you can tell, I have a passion for fraternity and sorority life, is on college universities, policies and practices and their impact on CBFO's sense of belonging. So I am done with the research phase, and now it's just writing chapters 4 and 5 and edits. So we're almost there. So thank you for manifesting the future Dr. Wright.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm excited for you. I remember sitting in 2020, was it? I remember sitting in on a class with your cohort and was like, man, I like these guys. The energy was great. And Dr. Gray was your class actually. And that for me was the turning point of, okay, I'm going to move forward with this program. But I remember that energy that you guys had and, where you were at that point. And now to know that you have a few months left, you give me and my cohort members who are on here right now, I would imagine some more hope and inspiration to make it to the finish line. So congratulations to all of you in cohort 5 and good luck. We look forward to seeing you guys in your regalia and being finally finished. Awesome, but I'm going to pass it over to you. I will be moderating the chat. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will have time for Q&A at the end. And we will also be giving away some more books this evening. So stick around and the floor is all yours, Stephanie.
All right, I'm going to go ahead. You think I have this tech stuff down like that, but give it a go. Let's see where we are with the screen share. That's good for everybody?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, perfect. All right, so one, for those who are in the webinar with us now, thank you for being here and present. Those who will watch it later, I want to thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to always assist the LEAD program and help with recruitment and interest in these kind of conversations. So tonight, I titled the session "Equity: A Leader's Choice," because engaging in DEI work, especially matters of equity, it is a choice, right? So you can choose to get on this boat or get off, and however that your decision is going to determine what happens next for you as an individual and within your organization. So I will start off by just giving you, I know Jovan gave my whole bio, but I like to just sum it up just a little bit more. So I've been working in higher education for probably about 20 years now. And I've worked in various capacities. And so, like I said earlier, leadership being my jam, I know that higher ed is the place that I'm supposed to be and impact change. As a member of cohort 5, which I always say in every session, right? Like we're the best cohort, hands down, forever and always. That has been that cohort has really been a place for so many of us to grow as leaders. And, we enter into the program right before the pandemic hit. And so when we talk about, if you join the program or you're already in the program, we talk about VUCA, right? Like, you will understand that was a very VUCA situation. Google it. I'm not teaching tonight. So consulting, advocate, I've been advocating for, what I didn't know was DEI since I was in the 4th grade, right? Didn't realize it then. And so that's just kind of been my journey. And through folks from my undergraduate career, which have really, they kind of pushed me in this direction and gave me some tools. They've really helped me become the advocate that I am today. Like I said, lifelong learner, right? So I had my 4th degree, but always seeking opportunities, whether it's readings, webinars, et cetera, to continue to learn and grow. This world is constantly evolving. And though I know society looks like when we take 5 steps forward, we also take 10 steps back. But if you don't do the work, then you don't know how to really navigate within this world. So I always encourage folks to continue to learn and never stop engaging in the work. So we've all seen this image or images very similar, right? And we're going to talk about equity, which is 3rd column. People like to put this image out there and say, we need to get toward this, but we never talk about the why, and we never talk about the how, right? We just say we need equity. And I think that as we've continued to evolve as a nation, as a world, we throw these things out about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we don't do all the work to get there. So when we're thinking about equity, we have to start to examine within ourselves and also the environments that we are around, right? So from our workplace, our family life, and seeing where are the inequities. And so much we just focus on, is it race-based, right? But equity comes in so many different facets, right? We need to think about pay equity. We need to think about access to education, resources, and things of that nature. And so when you start to look at the world around you and seeing, where am I privileged and where do I not need to worry about X, Y, and Z to live a great life or to work in this environment and feel safe and comfortable in this environment, versus someone else who doesn't have the same identities as your own self. For me, as a Black queer woman, right, I get hit in every direction. And so I constantly have to think about, what does that look like for me? But as someone who has access, different access, right, different resources, my struggle with those identities may look different for someone with those same identities, but doesn't have the same access to resources as I do. And so my responsibility in that is to challenge systems that will not allow that other individual to have the same access as me. And when we engage in the equity work, then we're also engaging in the development of belonging. You already heard I care about belonging based on my dissertation. But when we think about belonging, that encompasses everything. That means we've diversified, we've included, and we've made sure that things are equitable. So now I'm entering into an environment, whether it's through politics, work, it's a grocery store, and I'm safe and I feel like I belong and I can see things that I can connect to. So it's important that we start to examine the world around us. And I love this because I think this quote, this post really breaks it down. So diversity is a fact, right? So as America, we're diverse as heck, right? Like, we're the melting pot. Everybody's here, right? So we have diversified. You look at your place where you went to school, right? It may look a lot different than when it did when you were in school. We have diversified from not just race, but thinking about how institutions may not have been open to women at a time, right? So we've continued to evolve in this matter. Equity is a choice, and I'll jump back to that. inclusion. So we've included folks, right? We said we're going to open the door, we're going to let folks in, whether it happened through legislation, or whether we just had this awakening and we started to let folks come into, whether it's our departments or our institutions, right? So that's the action piece. But we brought folks into spaces, we've included you, but we haven't made sure that what you're experiencing has been equitable, right? So you are here, but you can't get access to food. So you're not really going to last long, right? You're here, but I'm not making it easy for you to register for your courses or for you to, get involved in an activity, a club, whatever it is, whatever it may be in your workplace. I'm not making it easy for you to do your job. I'm not giving you the tools and resources that you need to make sure that we have leveled the playing field. We have let folks come into spaces and knowing that they're ill-equipped in some way, shape, or form, just to say that we have diversified and we have been inclusive, and we have not made sure that the things occurring will allow them to feel like they belong, right? So you say you want to engage in making sure that you are working with differently able-bodied individuals, but your setup is not created so that they can feel as though they can navigate that space with whatever their differences are. And so those are things that you constantly have to think about. And when you start to put on your equitable lenses and look around, from your HR policies to institutional policies, just the complete structure of a building, and you think, right, like, yeah, I've asked you to come here, but I didn't create a space where you can feel like you're on the same level as everyone else and that you're excited to be in this space. So once we do the work of diversifying, including, and making sure that everything is equitable, then we get to the belonging. And that's when folks are happy, and that's when folks show up. And that's when they actually want to engage with your organization, with your institution, and stay. We see that we have this shortage, right? Where, especially with higher education, talking about the great resignation, it's because things aren't equitable, right? There's pay inequities, there's other things that we won't get into tonight, right? But you all know from your own organizations what those things look like, and that's causing folks to leave. So you can't expect folks to stay and be excited about working for you and building up your organization, working beside you, if you haven't made sure that they're safe and they belong, and that you're all on the same level. But what we have seen, right, as we talked about, folks like, oh, come on over. We want to diversify. We've seen a lot of performative allyship, right? And so people are talking about, we want to be equitable. We want to engage in equitable legislation and facilities and things of that nature. And they talk about it, right? So we've seen, and even in light of all of the mass shootings that we've been experiencing in the last week and a half, right? We've seen the statements, right? But no one's actually doing anything. So when we talk about performing, and we're thinking about whether it's diversity, equity, or inclusion, right, or belonging, you can't talk about it without being about it. And so when we think about the LEAD program, these are some of the things that they will challenge you on when we're sitting in conversation and we're talking about our leadership styles and the different type of leadership styles and how they can show up in different areas, and how your own leadership style will ebb and flow depending on the situation that you're in. And so as you are examining yourself, because a lot of this, to get to consideration about what's equitable and what's not, you have to do some self-examination, right? And so that will allow you to see, like, have I been performing equity? Have I been performing allyship? Or am I actually doing the work? And so the conversations that you will have in this program, and the content that you will read in the program, and the different individuals in your cohort that you will engage with, will challenge all of those perceptions you've had of yourself. They will open your eyes to the things around you, and you will start to go into your workplace, into your family life, and you will start to challenge people, and you will begin to do the work of making sure that things are equitable, that folks belong. Think about that family member that doesn't really show up to stuff anymore, right? Now you're sitting back and thinking like, oh, that's why, because when Nana said, right? And you're starting to think about all of those things. Now you get to go in and you can start to advocate, and you can start to say, well, you know what? So-and-so doesn't show up because when you do this, or when we place the certain things in the family outing this way, it doesn't allow them to feel included. It doesn't feel like it's an equitable experience for all of us to be included and to feel like we matter within this family, right? And then you start to make change. And let me tell you, having DEI conversation with your family is going to be some of the hardest conversations you're going to have. So go on and start it with your cohort family, because that'll help get you primed for the other conversations. So we have to start to move away from the performative aspect of it, right? We have to engage in the education so that we are constantly putting things in our toolbox. That's one of the first things that was said to us when we entered the program, is that through engaging in this cohort, in this program, you're going to continue to put tools in your leadership toolbox that's going to help you individually, help your organization. And if there are things you want to build your own organization, right, you're going to also get that understanding of entrepreneurship and how leadership shows up in developing that as well. So this is a little fuzzy, and I'm sorry, but I'm not great with like stealing folks' graphics. But from the National Equity Project, we don't plagiarize. This is how you can begin to do some of that work, right? And so, as I said before, we're reflecting, right? And so this is challenging you. What they're challenging you to do is look within. So the first place that you want to do when you're trying to engage in equitable leadership, is start to look within. Start to observe those around you. What we're taught, right, is leadership is top down, right? That's what folks have taught you. But what we learn in the LEAD program is that leadership is up and down, sideways, right? And your title does not automatically make you a leader. Because depending on where you are in your own journey, right, you have done the internal work to look at where you have been performative, or where you have not shown up for people, where you have not challenged systems that do not create equitable experiences for everyone involved. And then you can begin to engage your colleagues, your classmates, your family, et cetera, in those conversations. And it comes from, and it's meaningful, which is stated right here, right? It's a meaningful conversation, because you're approaching it from a place of self-awareness and also a curiosity about others. And that's how we learn to approach those tough conversations in the program, right? And saying like, and you talked about earlier when I was introduced, I'm one of the first people that will call someone out and have a conversation, right? And so what I've learned as I've continued to grow as a leader is, how do I engage my classmates or other individuals in conversations around DEI, especially equity, but from a place of curiosity, so that they're not on the defense. And if we really reflect on the last 2 years and conversations that we've had around systemic oppression, equity and inclusion, and things like that, there have been a lot of, we haven't gotten far because we're too busy like screaming, we're not engaging from a place of curiosity. And some of it is because we also just haven't done the work to understand another person's experience, our own experiences, right? And like, what were those things that were ingrained in us from childhood that we've walked with, and now we need to begin to unlearn, so that we can enter into our workforce, our our family life, our own personal conversations with ourselves, and say, okay, that's not right. And that doesn't make it a good experience for other human beings. That doesn't allow person A to have the same experience as person B. We're in the same institution and experiencing it differently because of our identities, but that doesn't mean that the resources that we have shouldn't be the same, right? And making sure that I'm 5'3", right? We go back to the photo. I'm 5'3". There's a lot of things I can't reach, right? I got the step stool, pat, 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 3 steps. I need it, right? Sometimes that's not enough, right? But do you have the step stool for that person? And I'm not saying like a literal step stool, but what are the things where you notice that folks have a disadvantage? And are you in a position to either bring that item that they need or items that they need to be on the same level as you, or advocate for them to have that? And so those are things that I want you to consider and sit back and just think about some instances where you're like, I don't understand why Todd was so upset, right? I don't understand the conversation that Todd had. And before you start talking to Todd, do some self-reflection, look within yourself, and then engage Todd in that conversation. And then from there, you can determine how best to act and advocate for that individual. In the words of James Baldwin, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can change until it's faced. And I think that that is where we are when we're having the conversations about DEI. There are so many things that have been put in place to keep particular demographics at a disadvantage, at a place where they lose their voice, where they stop fighting, right? And then when they pick themselves up, they say, oh, well, they're resilient. But can folks stop having to be resilient? And can they just have a space where we have created it to be simple for them to exist, for them to love, live, and lead? Why does everything have to be a battle? And a lot of that is because we have not sat down and looked at what are the things around us? What are the things that I'm contributing to that is not making it easy for the next person to live, love, and lead? How am I stopping their growth? And understand, and I know we're not talking about this week, but when you create these barriers for folks and individuals don't have the ability to be on that same level, when they're constantly in fight mode, they're constantly in survivor mode, right? That's an impact on their mental and emotional health. And so now we're looking at the psychological safety of individuals, right? And once I don't feel psychologically safe and I'm constantly in warrior mode, that starts to impact me physically, which means now I'm sick, which means now I'm not showing up. But guess what? Because your system is not equitable, I don't have sick time. So I can't even rest. There's no rest. And so those are things I want us to start to think about as you are examining the way that you're leading your team. And if you're not in a position right now where you're leading a team, right? That doesn't matter. You get to challenge the folks that are leading the team, right? But again, approach it from a place of curiosity so that you're not shut down. And like I said, if there's nothing else that I learned is like in this program is that how to do that so that my voice would be heard, so that I could speak for those who were not able to speak, right? Doing this self-work and then challenging inequitable practices and policies allows you to be the voice for the voiceless. And that can be scary, but that's a part of leadership as well, right? Sometimes leading is scary. Sometimes leading doesn't mean that you need to be on the forefront. You need to be the face of it all, the change that needs to be made. You can be on the back, right? Make the flyers, whatever it is that you need to do. But we have to face it. We have to face it within ourselves. And then we have to take a critical look at the things that we contribute to. And some of that is, again, legislation. Do you go out and vote, right? Some of that is just physical things around that we can actually make adjustments to. And some things are really simple to make it a level playing field for everyone around you. So a lot of the times what occurs is we start to have these conversations and you get the person that unmutes or writes in the chat, and this is not to be shady, just let me say that. This is just my own experiences. It's like, but I don't know where to begin. What do I do? Someone teach me. One, teach yourself, and a part of that is going and applying for the LEAD program, right? Because it's going to push you to really engage in some self-examination, right? So we talk about the first step is engaging in reflective inquiry. And then becoming curious about yourself, right? And your style and the things that you've done. And I've talked about this already, so I'm not going to continue to belabor that. But that's where it begins. Where have I not been a good community member? Where have I seen something that was wrong and I turned the other way? Where have I contributed to the inequity, right? And not spoken up. And that's not to say now you need to beat yourself up and go sit in the corner and cry, but also crying is a way to cleanse your soul. So if you need to do that, then do that. But once you're aware, once you engage in that self-awareness, now, like we said back at that image, that little blurry image, right now we can start to engage in that conversation and lean into those hard conversations. Lean into it. And if we go back to that performative image that I showed you, but don't make it about yourself. Don't start to center yourself, right? Because we have a habit of when we're being told, well, when you did X, Y, and Z, or when you supported this policy, when you supported this individual or this action, right? Or you helped build this contraption, this is how it impacted me. Don't then turn around to say, but last week I did blah, 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 or X, Y, Z. Don't get defensive. Lean in and listen. Remember to approach from a place of curiosity. And that's going to help you go right back to engaging in more reflective inquiry. And it's going to make you grow as an individual. And then from there, you can start to act, right? And help make change along with that person that you've been leaning into those conversations with. You have to listen to learn. Again, don't be defensive. Be open-minded to the information that you're hearing from other individuals. Don't dismiss other individuals when they're talking about how a system that they're navigating has felt unsafe for them, or inequitable things that they've experienced from pay inequity, or like, let's look at it like this. Maybe your company doesn't allow for paternity leave, right? So now I don't get the opportunity to be with my family, right? And I just had a newborn child, just adopted a newborn child, fostered a newborn child, whatever it is. And now I don't get an opportunity to really be there and be present, right? What are those things? Listen to learn. And then ask, what do you need? How can I help? And together with that information, you both get to go in and start to make meaningful change. And that's how we start to level that playing field. And so if you make this your cycle, and you continue to be open to dismantling systems that you are actively engaged in, that you are witness to, that are surrounding us. And there's so many systems, right? We're not just talking about the overarching system that is America and government and police and things of that nature, but what's happening in your 9 to 5? What's happening within your household? What's happening within your church, right? What does that look like? And Dr. Gray and I have engaged in those conversations, right? Like, again, thinking about my identities and wanting to be in the church, but I can't do that. Why? Because I'm dating a woman. What is happening, right? But how do we begin to dismantle those systems? So really take your blinders off to look around. Where are things it's not fair, right? And it's just making life harder for other individuals. And life's hard enough already. So do we need to add on? Or how can we help lighten the load? So as you continue to engage in that cycle that I just mentioned, consistently ask yourself and ask your team. And when I'm saying team, again, doesn't mean that you are actually someone's supervisor, but your team is your family, your team is your homies, your team can be the folks that you work with, right? And you could just bring it up at a staff meeting, send it in an email. But some things to consider, right? Where are our policies and practices prioritizing one group over another? A lot of the places that we work, live, play, learn, they weren't created for every individual, right? And so some of the policies that we're still operating off of have not been adjusted in I don't know how many years. So do we need to make some adjustments? How do we look at this, and how do we go in with an equitable lens? How do we go in with a lens of inclusion, a lens of diversity, a lens of belonging, in order to make sure that everyone is prioritized? Which voices are at the decision-making table? And when we talk about that, I'm not saying just don't invite someone to the table. Make sure they have a voice. Don't have a table that is for really only seats 4. So that person that you invited in is sitting off in a corner somewhere. Well, they were in the room. That's inclusion, but that's not equity, right? Make space at that table. Get a larger table. And then make sure that they aren't silenced, right? That's equity. That's leveling the playing field. If there's been harm, and let's be honest, folks, especially the past 2 years, there's been a lot of harm and a lot of conversations that we have just been operating with one another with this anger and hostility, right? And so we can't move to making meaningful change and engaging in those hard conversations when we haven't addressed the harm. So what have you done, whether it's with individuals or within your organization, to address whatever harm that has occurred, acknowledging it and addressing it, so that you can start to get to making the change, so that everyone can feel as though they belong within that, whatever it is, your organization. Create a process to continue to examine what your policies and practices are, right? Sometimes we get in and we're like, all right, we're going to update these HR policies and whatever, and then we don't look at them again for another like 10 years. The world is changing every day. You have to stay on top of that. So what have you done? What practice have you created to make sure you're continuously examining that and being prepared to make the alterations necessary so that your organization stays with the times, and you don't start having folks saying, you know what, this is not an organization that actually cares about me and cares about me being here and making it a place where I can learn and grow. So I don't want to be committed to them. And we know, going back to the performative piece, after the murder of George Floyd, everybody had a statement, but wasn't nobody living up to their statements, right? So it's time to go back and look at that pretty thing you put out on social media or your website and say, has the work we've been doing to grow as an organization or as an individual aligned with this statement that I wrote? Because I had bars, right? I had all these words to put up here for y'all so people can get off my back and I didn't get canceled and whatever else. But what I do, what I walk, is not what I talk. So let's walk it like we talk it. And that's what we need to do. And if not, we need to reassess. We need to start getting some DEI speakers to come in, and not just a one-off, but we did it now, or we did it, guys. We're there, we're DEI certified. That's not it. Because doing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion is ongoing, is daily, which is why we go back to, this is a lifelong learning process. And if you want to get the tools, you need to insert yourself into a leadership program, such as Stockton's Lead, shameless plug. And so what is the risk if we're not choosing equity? We're choosing harming individuals that we say we care about if we don't choose equity. We're choosing to have an organization that's lacking diversity of thought, right? Not just individuals, but diversity of thought, because folks with certain identities, right, or skill sets didn't feel valued, safe, and included within your organization because you didn't choose equity. So if you want to have a thriving organization, right, again, higher education, corporate, religious, whatever it is, choose equity. If not, you're going to find yourself without participants in the work that you're trying to do. And so, especially if you're a community organization that's looking to, make meaningful change within a community, if you don't have equitable practices, what are you doing? Are you helping that community? And then you can't have folks that want to actually give their time and talent to your organization. So now that group that you are supposed to be helping, now they suffer. And it becomes a vicious cycle and nothing changes. And we stay stuck and we're in this rut. We're currently, as a country, in this rut, in this unhealthy cycle. So let's choose equity. Let's move beyond, I've just included you. Let's move beyond, I've diversified. Let's start making sure that things are equitable, and let's start making sure that people feel safe and that they belong within your organization, so that we can get out of this rut and we can begin to move forward as an individual, as a people, as a nation. Q&A. I'm ready.
Well, Stephanie, I'm just going to say first and foremost, if you're going to share your screen for me so that we can get to the format of Q&A, I just want to just say I am so proud of you on so many levels. That was a fantastic presentation from beginning to end. It was dynamic and there was so much to unpack in there. And I will say to those who are on our webinar and those who are on Facebook Live, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat for Stephanie. And I'm going to begin. I have the first question. I'm taking privilege right now. I'm taking a license. Stephanie, you mentioned that in your own way, you've been doing DEI work since you've been in 4th grade. And we were talking about that before we began. And you mentioned it again as well. Even now that you are somewhat seasoned in this work, because I find that when I do this work, there are still frustration points where I have to check myself at the door. I mean, and so what are those moments for you? Talk about what that's like, where you have to, as Jasmine Sullivan says, pick up your feelings before you go into the work of talking folks about this DEI thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say I should have led with this. I don't consider myself a DEI expert, so I like to say that. But as someone with so many marginalized identities, right, it's almost like you're born into it. And so I think the frustration becomes when I continue to have to repeat myself. Like I just said this, right? I gave you the playbook. And so I've been in situations where I will say this, I have been blessed with the ability to kind of forecast certain things. Like I could see something on the news and I know exactly how it's going to show up in my work. And I'm 99.9% right. And so I will give folks a playbook. Okay, this is what's going to happen next. So we should do X, Y, and Z. And then it happens, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know. I'm confused, right? I don't know how it's happened. That is a frustration because what's happening is you've performed for me to get me to be quiet. And now that it's difficult, right? And now that you're scared or you're being called out, now you want to listen. But if you had just listened from the beginning, we probably wouldn't be here. And I think that has been the source of my frustration. Or then, now I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I'll say it anyway. I think sometimes we want to force things down folks' throat. And we have to understand that with different ages and experiences comes the different ability to digest this new information. And so we have to be able to pivot, right, our approach per demographic. And so trying to talk to folks who are like DEI experts who are doing this work day in and day out, and they're just like, well, I don't know why you don't get it. I don't know why you don't get it. And it's like, because you probably should finesse that a little differently when you're talking to person A versus person B. This group is going to pick it up because they're in that with you. Them not so much, right? And I don't want to be ageist, so I'm not going to throw it out there, right? So, but sometimes, you know, our elders are a little harder to get through to. So we have to know how to teach to different learners. Yeah.
And I share that that sentiment, because I know one of the things that one of my frustration points is when I feel like I have to explain why systematic racism is still a thing that is a tangible, breathing, living entity. And people say, well, we're in a post-racial society where we don't have, what's the big fuss? We don't have it. And I say, wow, I really got to do this. Like, I really have to go down this road. So thank you for making it clear that sometimes we do have to pivot, and depending on who we're talking to, depending on the audience, we do have to come at it and address it differently. Not every fish takes a certain bait. So you really do have to understand, who you're talking to, who you're having this conversation with, because some people are at a totally different place where some people may actually believe that racism doesn't exist. And I've had DEI meetings with people who say, why are we still talking about race? Why does everything have to be about race? And my response to them is, can you please name me one aspect of our society where race has not infiltrated, infected, or infested that dynamic? Name me one aspect.
Right, because if race didn't matter, why is it on applications?
There you go.
And that's the big question everyone's asking now. So when folks approach that, right, it's like, well, I don't understand why we're talking about it. Because you're talking about it. You may not be saying it, but it's on your application, it's on your website.
Exactly. So, Jovan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you to have a few comments and remarks. And
thank you. I feel so full, not from any food around me, but from everything that I've taken in from your conversation tonight. And it's no secret, Dr. Gray is a pastor, some other faculty in the program are pastors. So I'm a big fan of being fed. And, we eat multiple meals a day. So you should be getting fed mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like, you have to fill yourself in these different ways to be the best version of yourself. And this conversation was just so enriching. Definitely have a lot of notes. As I mentioned, I'm a note taker. But some things that really stood out to me was, you mentioned my responsibility is to challenge the systems that doesn't allow others to have the same access as me. And that made me just think about, being selfless. Too often some people take on the mentality of, well, better them than me, or that's not my problem. But it is our problem, because, while you may not be the one who walks away feeling hurt from that comment or that action, the people around you are hurting, and they're hurting deeply. And that impacts the morale, it impacts the energy, and energy is so contagious. So as you said that, it just really resonated with me, because it's a theme that has been said every night this week. So for those of you who haven't been on, another shameless plug, get on the YouTube channel, check out the recordings. But if you notice, there's a reoccurring theme here. And as Stephanie had alluded to, she's not a DEI expert, nor does her 9 to 5, have DEI in the title. Like, she's not a DEI manager. But I was so intentional when we were talking about this with Dr. Gray. Like, we need to get folks who are not just DEI directors, DEI managers. Like, we need people who have, I'm just a college access coordinator, right? But I'm doing this work every day with my students, with my colleagues. Like, it doesn't matter if that's in your title or not. We all have a responsibility. So I love that, you just brought up such great points. And that just shows folks, like, you don't have to have this be your your primary role, but it is and should be your primary responsibility to help others feel included, feel like they belong, and to know that we're all in this fight together. And then you also mentioned that leadership doesn't always mean being at the forefront, and that's so true. You know, we all have responsibilities that we take on, and while, you know, your name may not be on the booklet, or you may not be in the accolades, you know, at the end of the speech that's given, but just to know that you are advancing this work in any capacity, that's what matters. Each of us have a role to play, and no matter how we do it, if it's, you know, for hundreds of people a day or one person a day, one person a week, we all contribute to making this world a better place, because it's bad out here, right? Every day, we don't hear about things that are happening every day, but every day someone is feeling, you know, unappreciated, unvalued, disrespected, and hurt. So I think if we could just be a little more compassionate and be more graceful and understand that while I may not be the one crying tears at night, someone else close to me is. And often those people are smiling in your face, and you would never know the hurt that they feel. So it doesn't cost you anything to be kind, but people act like it does. So don't mind me as I go on a rant. But I just appreciate everything that you shared this evening. And I welcome any comments, questions, remarks in the chat as well, whether it's on Facebook Live or here on the webinar. And for folks who are watching later, you totally missed out, but you're still getting it. So we encourage you to please follow up, you know, post in the YouTube video. If you just want to comment on this, we welcome any and all feedback. So
I want to say that, Stephanie, it is because of your feedback, the feedback of other students in previous cohorts, that this program has evolved. One of the things that we tout in this doctoral program is the multidisciplinary aspect of it. Is not just for educators. It's not just for higher ed or K-8. It's not, you know, we have law enforcement, we have military, we have nonprofit, we have entrepreneurs. So we tout that because we know that leadership goes across all spectrums. But one of the things that we realize, and Stephanie, this is a big credit to your voice as well as some of your cohort members, your cohort family, is that we evolved this program to say, listen, while we spread DEI and sprinkled it across the courses as we could, we needed a course that spoke specifically to DEI and leadership. So that is why this program decided that we're going to have a course titled DEI in leadership, that we can devote a specific course to this, but also keep the content in the other courses as well. So we're not simply saying, okay, we've covered the base with this one course. No, because we realize that if we're in this global and diverse, ever-changing society, leadership is the essential thing. And we have to have a program that is willing to address that. And that is the evolution of this program. So I just wanted to say kudos to your voice, because while sometimes we may feel like our voice is like the Brillo pad, and we say, well, oh God, you know, here we go again. We're grading, you know, the sand. We're doing the sandpaper thing, and here we go again. No. Sometimes we're called to agitate. We're called to agitate, and we are called to disrupt, and that is what this work is about. And as Joven put it very succinctly, it doesn't have to be the fact that we have a title of DEI specialist or DEI trainer. You know, in our own way, we are disruptors, because we cannot look at the status quo and keep it as it is and say that's okay with us. So I don't see any further chats in the any comments in the chat, and we're at our 7 o'clock hour. And I would like to, Stephanie, I want to give you some closing remarks, and then I would like Joven to close us out. So Stephanie, to you, then Joven to you, and then I'll say, and then I'll just say to everybody, thank you so much for logging on. Tomorrow, we are back at the 6 o'clock hour with inclusion and belonging with Terrence Jones. So Stephanie, is yours.
So again, as I stated, one, I just want to thank Joven and Dr. Gray for inviting me into this space. And Dr. Gray, thank you for being that person who always heard my side rants about DEI stuff. So I appreciate you and really putting your, you know, you walk what you talked. So thank you for that. And for anyone who watches this, again, it doesn't take much to be kind. It doesn't take much to check in, as they say, on your strong friend. It doesn't take much to use your voice. Recognize where you have your privilege. That's not always a bad thing. I know we have kind of made privilege a bad word. It's not a bad thing. And how can you utilize that privilege you've been given to make meaningful change for the next person? And if you can do that, that's the blessing. So thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all for putting this summit together. I appreciate you.
All right, and thank you so much. We truly appreciate you for giving us your time and your talent and your wisdom on this topic. So as Dr. Gray had mentioned, tomorrow evening, we will be having Terrence Jones, who is the owner and lead facilitator of Jones Gold Consulting, LLC. He is also the director of academic enrichment at Pierce College, serving as the founding director for the Center of Male Engagement. Very excited for Mr. Jones to come and talk about inclusion and belonging as we come towards the ending of this summit. So please continue to join us at 6 p.m. If not, we will still have the recordings available, but there's nothing like being here in live time. So thank you all and have a wonderful evening.